It's very hard to look at where things stand and say that everything is rosy, isn't it? You will recall when these 5 pledges were announced that they were treated by some people in the media as if the government had chosen targets that were deliberately easy to meet. True. So that by the time they came about, government will be able to say, ta-da, all 5 of them be done. As we're seeing, it's not going everything in the Prime Minister's way. I would say this, though. You're right to say that we have avoided recession narrowly. Most of our neighbours are in recession, including many of the significant Euro nations. Inflation is higher than the government would want, but higher still in a number of our competitor markets. The debt one is within government's control and has been very sticky, but debt is higher still in some of our competitor markets. But all of that said, so I think you can see some progress on those targets. The one that really matters, it's like a 4+1. The one that really matters, certainly for the Prime Minister's vote, is the boats one. Yeah. Stopping the small boats is basically the main test for this government. And I would say that if they aced that and they failed on the other 4, the government would still go into the election in a positive position. And if they aced the other 4 and failed on that one, they'd go into the next election in a really poor position.
Really?
So actually there's one that I think really matters in an outsized manner.
So you think if inflation was still running rampant, people still couldn't get into the NHS hospitals, but everyone worry not, because the boats have stopped. You think people will go, OK...
No, I think that if they could show some progress on the other 4, as they are now, but miles from complete, but had nailed the boats one, the government would be in a strong position.
What do you think, Ella, your thoughts?
I don't know, I think the Conservatives are trying to console themselves with the idea that the small boats thing is going to save them at the... on the doorstep or at come election time. I don't think it's that simple. I do think it's a big issue. I think people care about controlling borders. But to say, I think the interesting thing is that of all these pledges, almost all of them, bar the grow economy one, which is kind of tokenistic. He had to have something like that in there. They're all quite negative. Halving inflation, cut a bit of debt, cut a bit of the waiting times, stop the small boats. It's all making things slightly less terrible. And there's not a lot of positive, ambitious dynamism in there. That's why people took the mick out of him at the start. It reminds me of, was it Ed Miliband's tablet gravestone thing? It's, this kind of...
He hasn't put it on a stone yet.
Yeah, well, there's a kind of dread to it all, and I think that this is the problem with Rishi Sunak, is that, and, I mean, obviously the Conservative government, but in particular him, is that he's sold himself as, post-Boris, post-Liz Truss, a kind of calm, collected technocrat, someone who is sensible and get the job done and keep things on an even keel. That's not what we need at the moment. I'm not saying that we need another Johnson, kind of mad chaos, but you need some kind of ambitious, large-scale plan for change. None of these 5 pledges came close to that, and the fact that he hasn't even managed to come anywhere near any of them, I think, just proves the point that we all knew from the start, that this guy's not someone who's going to change the country, change the world. He's not even going to, he'd probably have to change his pledges, but they all do that.